Hello again, everyone. Kevin Remdy here, IT Pro Evangelist with Microsoft. And here is part 3 today. We're talking about System Center 2012 Unified Installer. Now in parts 1 and part 2, you'll recall we did some configuration. So we did some, first of all, some of the prerequisites for using the Unified Installer. We downloaded all the components, we unpacked all the prerequisites, we got them all set to go in a file structure. In part 2, we prepped the virtual machines, we did some configuration of those servers, and we made sure that we had all the firewall configurations and group policy and everything in place as required by the user guide. And now today in part 3, we're going to actually do the installation. So this is the part you've all been waiting for. All that work should hopefully pay off. So again, here's the link for the download of the components if you haven't done that already, but of course by this point you've probably done that. You're all set if you're following along. And I'm going to click on this link to the user guide on TechNet. And that's where we can then see the documentation for running the System Center 2012 Unified Installer. And so again, like any of this other documentation, you'll want to walk through this. You want to make sure that you understand the different issues around this, anything you need to know ahead of time. But really running the installer, once you've done this pre-work and have all the files in place and ready to go, running the installer really should go pretty smoothly. Now, as I talked about in part 2, I'm going to do the installation from my orchestrator computer. And there's one more thing I wanted to tell you about these machines that I've configured. First of all, they need to be running. Okay, so before you launch the Unified Installer, you need to have all of those components, those component servers, config-man, orc, service manager, VMM. For me, I've got ops-man over here. I've got app controller, DPM, and then the service manager data warehouse server. These are all running and ready to go. Now, also, is very important, on the installer, you need to be running in the context of the account that has administrative rights on the machines that you're deploying to. So you can create an account, you can make it a local administrator on all those machines, or if you can use just a test lab environment administrator account. That's what I'm doing. I have a local domain admin that I'm using for the sake of doing this deployment. And during the installation, using the installer, you'll actually be prompted for that account. So that's also the account you'll use in that information in the Unified Installer. Now, as we talked about in last part, I have copied the installer to the C drive on my orchestrator machine. So I'm ready to run that. So we're going to go ahead and launch setup. And here it is. Now you notice you can use this tool to install the entire suite, and you'll be able to choose the components that you want to install. And another option is to install some components or a component on a local server. So if some later point you don't want to run the whole installer process, you can actually install particular components on a machine. So let's go ahead and install System Center. And it gives us a warning right away. Remember, this is designed to do a new deployment. So it assumes that these machines that you're deploying to are empty. No SQL Server, really nothing on those boxes. It's really just for testing or proof of concept. It's not for production use. So read through this and click OK. And of course, we have licensing terms, so you'll make sure that you install or read all these. And you don't even have an option. You have chosen to use an evaluation edition. That's all that's available right now in release candidate form. And choose what components you want to install. Now, as I said, in my case, I'm going to install all of them, so I'm going to leave these checked. And of course, if you've chosen to install all of them, now you actually have to enter those paths for the different tools. So you can do the browse, and this is a really awkward tool to continue to use with every single one of these lines in order to find the location for each one of these. So for this case, orchestrator, there it is. So that's one way to do it. I actually prefer to just simply type the name of the files in here because I know what the name of the folders were that I created. And the nice thing about this tool is also that it will not let you continue until these are all correct and it's actually found the installation. So in the case of Virtual Machine Manager, it was VMM, and App Controller was App Controller. Operations Manager was OpsMan. Configuration Manager, ConfigMan. Service Manager was in the ServMan folder. And DPM. Now, a couple of these actually aren't just in that folder, so you can actually see which ones I need to correct. And in this case, Service Manager and DPM actually have to go a little bit deeper than that. So for Service Manager, Going back up here, I actually have to go into the RC and then either 64-bit or 32-bit. So I'll go with the AMD 64. I'll use that address in this line right here. And then for DPM, go back up again, it created a folder called DPM RC. And that's actually where I'll find the setup. So that's the one I want to use. Alright, so paste that there, and this time when I click Next, it should continue. Good. So now, of course, you need to agree to the licensing terms for the different products that you're going to install, and for the sake of the prerequisites as well. And so we'll make sure we check all those boxes, accepting the licensing terms after we've carefully read them, of course. And now, on to the prerequisites. Now remember, from part 1, we installed our prerequisites into a folder called prerequisites, or prereqs. So that's the folder that I'm going to use for most of these. A couple of these I'll have to go into subfolders in order to have this work correctly. So for the sake of the .NET framework, it was there, and we'll just, again, kind of like what we did with the components, we'll go ahead and put that link in each one of these. Now the tricky part is that when you click Next, it tells you the ones you need to correct, but you can't tell which ones were not corrected and which ones you need to correct. Now I happen to know, because again some of these were a little bit more complex, that they needed to be unpacked into separate folders. So it is going to be SQL Server, which is right here, and in fact if I just look, that folder should be sufficient, so we'll copy that address and put that right here for the media location for SQL Server. And if I click Next, I should see now 2 left. Good, we're getting there. The other one was the cumulative update, and that was, where is that one? Down at the bottom here. And the last one was the Windows Automated Installation Kit, and that was right here. Alright, so how did we do? Success! Good. And now it gives you a chance to choose to change the default destination location. There's no need to do that. I'll go ahead and put it on the program files. And now what are the server names? So I had a server for Orchestrator called Orc, and it doesn't require the fully qualified domain name. Now the server manager, as we said, requires 2 servers, and I happen to name mine SCSM and SCSM DW for data warehouse, and then protection manager was in DPM server. And again, if anything's wrong, it will tell you. And it actually will take this opportunity, as you click Next, to check and see. Now what it's looking at is the firewall open and allowing me through? Is remote management configured properly? Do we have what we need to make that communication so that I can then launch the deployment on those machines from this location? And this check takes a second to actually complete. And in our case, it completed successfully, so that's good. Getting to the next screen without an error is always a good thing. Okay, so now it's asking us for that installer account. Now, in future versions of this tool, we may allow you to have different accounts or a separate domain account for different parts of the processing and so on, and for different service accounts for the different components. In this release, we're really just going to use the installer account as the service account for all of the components. So it does, as we talked about earlier, it is required to be an administrative account in the domain. So my domain name is Remedy, account name is admin, and the password is none of your business. And then specific questions on particular components. So for example, do you want to rename your management group or your site code site name for configuration manager and so on. Now in my case, I'm going to go ahead and just leave them the default, but you can choose whatever values you want there. Of course, you need to say yes to the Customer Experience Improvement Program. We always encourage you to do that because we learn so much from that and improve the products that way. I'll also use Microsoft Update to update the components. And there we have it. So there's our summary of what we're installing, where we're installing it, and I click Install, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to click install, and we're going to watch this process go. I'm going to pause the recording, and we'll come back when it's complete. And by the way, this will actually take a few hours, so you don't want to sit here and watch this whole thing. We'll be right back. And as you see, we're moving along here. This is something, another note about this as well. The orchestrator installation will complete first, and that's because then it is actually using the runbook functionality in Orchestrator to then deploy the other components. Also, the other components are actually being installed by runbooks as well, but those runbooks are actually running on the individual machines. So part of the process actually is to install the Orchestrator runbook engine on each one of these servers and then use it to do the local installation. At the very end, it will actually do a cleanup and remove that runbook component. Just checking in, looks like we're still making progress. Unfortunately, we do see a red bar here. It looks like something happened with my app controller install, but we'll take a look at the log after we're done here. We'll see what the problem is. Okay, so we're done. And it looks like we have a couple of issues with a couple of the different components. So as I said earlier, the app controller didn't complete properly, as well as the data protection manager. Looks in this case of data protection manager, it actually timed out. So my computer was actually busy doing some other things, and things slowed down a little bit, so that might have been the issue there. And then at some point I may decide to reattempt that, or we can simply look at those machines and see what the problem might have been. We also have a log file. If I click that link, it'll actually open up Notepad with the log file. And I can scroll down toward the end to see if I can figure out where the problem was. And notice, for the sake of Data Protection Manager, there was simply a timeout in the runbook. So depending on the performance of your machines, you may find some errors if it takes more than 2 hours for something to execute or for it to report back. That will actually time out. Now on the app controller, and actually let me see if I can find anything about app controller. Oh, maybe not. Let's see. Let's look in the upward direction. There we go. And again, we won't do a bunch of debugging right here. One thing that's kind of interesting, though, I did after noticing the failure on the app controller, was I actually looked at the machine itself. And so I'm going to go to that app controller computer, and I noticed that it could be that some things were not removed, such as that runbook functionality that I talked about earlier, the fact that we're actually installing things using the runbook engine. So it probably didn't clean itself up properly. But I am able to actually open up the portal. Now I do have a security or a certificate issue that I need to try to resolve and set up certificates properly. But if I continue to that website, the first time that I did this, it actually asked me to install Silverlight, because this is a Silverlight control in this browser. But once I did that, I got in. So it looks to me as if App Controller is actually installed properly. So that's good news. And I may find the same on the Data Protection Manager server as well. So to summarize, we talked about in Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 how to set up the components, download the components and the prerequisites. We talked about that in Part 1. In Part 2, we described how to and showed you how to set up the machines prior to the install, so all the different machines that we're deploying the components to. And then finally here in Part 3, we actually did the deployment, got it going, and now it's up to you. I'll leave it to you as an exercise to actually start working with the System Center 2012 components, start learning those, start playing with those, set up VMM as a manager of your Hyper-V environment, and so on. Here's some additional resources for you again. I hope you'll take advantage of them, and I hope you'll come back for another screencast series in the future. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.